Snow fell on her open palm. She lay face down 40 yards from the iron gate. One arm stretched toward it like she had been reaching, the other curled beneath her chest, where the baby lay wrapped in threadbare calico. The wind had stopped. The world had gone quiet in the way it does before something freezes to death. Her breath came shallow white mist against white ground. The baby's eyes were open, dark too aware, watching the gray December sky through the gap in the cloth. He did not cry. Crying brought nothing out here. He had learned that in 11 months of hard living. The cold did not care that she was 24, did not care that the baby had not eaten in 2 days, did not care that she had walked 40 miles believing someone would be at the end of the road. The cold was coming to finish what the law had started. Clara Whitmore had stopped feeling her feet 3 hours ago, stopped feeling her hands an hour after that. Now she felt nothing except the weight of her son against her chest and the burning in her lungs with each breath. She had crawled the last 100 yards after her legs gave out, crawled through snow that came up to her elbows, crawled toward that iron gate because it looked like Heaven's Gate, all that black metal against all that white snow, and she had thought if she could just reach it, if she could just touch it, someone would come. No one came. The gate stood between two stone pillars that cost more than most homesteaders made in a decade. It had been built to keep the world out. It had worked fine until today. Clara's fingers had stopped moving. Her eyes had stopped focusing. But somewhere deep in her chest, in that place where mothers keep their last reserves of strength, she was still fighting, still trying to shield Samuel from the ground, still trying to keep her body between him and the wind. She did not know that 400 yards away a man was stepping onto his porch. She did not know that in 10 minutes everything would change. She only knew that she was dying and that her son was dying with her and that she had failed them both. The last thing she saw before her vision went dark was the iron gate. The last thing she felt was Samuel's small body pressed against hers. The last thing she thought was, "I am sorry. I am so sorry." Then the cold took her. Elias Thornton stepped out onto the porch at 4:30, collar turned up against the wind. He carried a Winchester more from habit than need this close to the house. The only things that moved out here were cattle and the occasional coyote too stupid to stay in the timber. He had been checking the fence line every evening for 30 years. A man did not stop being careful just because he had gotten rich. The gate was a quarter-mile out. Black iron imported from Chicago set between two stone pillars his wife had picked out before she died. He had built it to keep the world out after she was gone. Built it to mark the boundary between his land and everyone else's grief. It had worked fine until today. He saw the shape in the snow before he understood what it was. At first, just a dark smudge against white, then fabric unmoving, then closer, a woman's boot-cracked leather sole worn through. Elias stopped 20 feet out. He had seen cattle freeze like this, spring calves caught in late storms, their mothers standing over them, bawling at the sky until the cold took them too. You walked past, or you wasted time trying to save something already lost. 25 years of frontier logic said walk past. He stepped forward anyway. She was small, curled on her side, facing the gate. Her hair had come loose from its pins, dark blonde, frozen stiff where it touched the ground. One hand stretched toward the iron bars like she had been crawling. The other disappeared beneath her chest. Elias knelt. His knee cracked in the silence. That was when he saw the bundle. Calico cloth stained and thin, and inside it a baby's face, eyes open, watching him. Elias's breath caught. The baby did not blink, did not cry, just stared with an awareness no infant should have, like it knew exactly how close death was and had made its peace. 11 months old, maybe, too thin, lips going blue. Elias pressed 2 fingers to the woman's throat. Pulse, faint. But there, he had done this calculation 1,000 times in his life. On the range, in business and war. How much time did you have? What could you save? What did saving cost? His hands were shaking. That had not happened in years. The baby's hand emerged from the cloth, tiny fingers red from cold. They closed on nothing, opened again, closed. The gesture of someone who had been reaching for something their whole short life and never quite caught it. Elias looked at the house, warm light in the kitchen window, smoke from the chimney. Martha would have supper on. He could call for help, send a ranch hand to town for the doctor, let someone else make the choice. Or he stood, unbuttoned his coat. It was heavy wool charcoal gray, custom made in St. Louis 3 years back. The buttons were silver, engraved with his initials. The lining was red silk because Eleanor had said a man needed one warm color, even if no one else saw it. He had worn it through blizzards and business meetings and cattle drives. It smelled like horse and tobacco and money. He took it off. The cold hit him immediate, sharp, personal. The wind found his vest, his shirt collar, the gap between his gloves and cuffs. He had forgotten what vulnerable felt like. Elias knelt again, spread the coat over the woman and child, both tucking it around them. The red lining flashed bright against snow before he folded it under. The baby's fingers found the wool, grabbed it, held on. Elias whispered it to the wind, to the sky, to whatever was listening. Not today. He slid his arms under her, one behind her shoulders, one beneath her knees. She weighed nothing, lighter than a newborn calf. He could feel every bone, could feel the baby pressed between them, a small, warm stone against his chest. He stood slowly, adjusting the weight. The coat slipped. The baby's hands shot out and grabbed his collar, tiny fists tangling in his shirt. The grip was surprisingly strong. Elias started walking. His boots crunched in the snow. The house was 100 yards. Might as well have been 100 miles. His arms burned, not from her weight, from something else. Some muscle he had not used in so long it had atrophied. Halfway there, the kitchen door opened. Martha Holloway stood silhouetted in lamplight, dish towel in her hands. She was 67, broad as a barn, and had been delivering babies and burying the dead since before Montana was a state. She took one look at Elias, coatless, carrying a frozen woman and child, and her face did not change. She had been waiting for this. "Good Lord, Elias," she said, stepping aside to let him through. "I was wondering when you would remember you were human." He carried them into the warmth. The baby's fingers were still locked on his collar. When Elias tried to set the woman down on the daybed by the stove, the baby would not let go. He had to pry the small hand open, finger by finger. And even then, the baby's eyes tracked him, accusing or forgiving. Elias could not tell which. Martha was already moving, barking orders at him like he was a ranch hand and not the man who paid her wages. "Get blankets from the cupboard. Boil water. Find that goat's milk in the cellar." Elias did what he was told. Outside the window, his coat lay crumpled in the snow where it had fallen. One sleeve stretched toward the gate. The silver buttons caught the last light. He did not go back for it. Clara woke to the smell of wood smoke and something cooking. Not the acrid smell of green wood that would not catch, the kind she had burned in the lean-to with James when the homestead was falling apart around them. This was seasoned, pine dry and hot, the smell of a house that could afford to waste heat. She opened her eyes. The ceiling was pine boards, tight-fitted, no gaps for wind. A quilt covered her, real patchwork, not rags stitched together. The pillow under her head was goose down. She could feel it in the way it held her skull, soft but firm. She had not slept on goose down since Pennsylvania. Panic hit. She tried to sit up. The room tilted. Her arms were weak, shaking. She could not remember. The snow, walking, the cold. Her feet, got her feet. Then she heard it. A small sound, half cough, half sigh. She turned her head so fast her vision blurred. Samuel. He lay in a wooden drawer that had been padded with blankets and set on 2 chairs to make a cradle. His face was clean. His hair had been combed. He wore a cotton gown she had never seen, white and soft, too fine for a homesteader's baby. His cheeks had color. Clara's breath came in gasps. She tried to swing her legs off the bed. They did not obey. Her feet were wrapped in cloth bandages, warm. She could smell some kind of salve. Camphor, maybe. Lard. The door opened. A woman entered carrying a wooden bowl. She was large, gray-haired, wearing a black dress and white apron. Her face was lined, but not unkind. She took one look at Clara, trying to stand, and shook her head. "Do not," she said. Not harsh, factual. "You try walking on those feet, you will split the skin I just finished saving." Clara froze. The woman set the bowl on a small table beside the bed. Steam rising. Broth. Real broth with fat glistening on top. "I am Martha Holloway," the woman said, sitting in a chair someone had placed by the bed. "You collapsed outside Mr. Thornton's property 2 days back. Been fever touched most of that time. Your boy is fine. I have been wet nursing him with goat's milk cut with water. He has taken to it. Clara stared at her mouth open, but no sound came. You are in the Thornton house, Martha continued. Main ranch house 4 miles north of Cutter's Pass. You remember walking? Clara nodded slowly. You remember why my sister Clara whispered? Her voice cracked. Sarah, next county over. She said she would take us in. We will find out about that, Martha said, not meeting her eyes. For now you need to eat. She held out the bowl. Clara's hands shook, taking it. The broth was hot, burned her tongue, but she did not care. She drank half before shame caught up with her. I cannot pay, she said. I do not have. I can work. I am strong. I just need a day or two. I can clean or cook or... Nobody asked you to pay? Martha took the bowl back before Clara could spill it. And nobody is asking questions yet. You rest. Baby is fed. You are warming up. That is all that matters right now. Clara looked at Samuel again. He was sleeping. One small fist curled near his face. She had been carrying him so long against her chest while she walked in her arms while she slept, standing up against barn walls that seeing him separate from her body felt wrong. Can I? You can hold him when you are steady, Martha said. Right now you are liable to drop him. Give it another day. Clara's throat closed. She nodded. Martha stood, brushed her hands on her apron. Mr. Thornton will want to know you are awake, but he will not come in unless you say it is all right. He is particular about that. Who but Martha was already at the door. She paused, looked back. The man who found you, who carried you in, it is his house. Her voice softened slightly. You are safe here. Remember that. She left. Clara sat in the silence. The wood stove ticked as metal expanded in heat. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 5. She looked around properly for the first time. The room was small but clean. A window showed gray evening light, snow still falling, a chest of drawers, a washstand with pitcher and basin, and hanging on a hook by the door a coat. Heavy wool, charcoal gray. The buttons caught lamplight. Silver. Engraved. She recognized it. Not from seeing it before, but from waking beneath it in the snow. The weight of it over her and Samuel both. The smell of tobacco and horses and something else. Safety. Clara pulled the quilt tighter. 10 minutes later, footsteps in the hall. They stopped outside the door. A knock. Soft. Ma'am, a man's voice. Deep. Formal. Martha said you are awake. Clara tried to speak. Managed yes. The door opened. He stood in the doorway, did not enter. Tall, lean, silver threading through dark hair. 50, maybe older. His face was weathered-lined at the eyes and mouth. He wore a vest and white shirt, no coat. His hands hung at his sides. Scarred. Capable. He did not smile. He looked at her. She looked back. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he nodded once. Turned, left. Clara heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. She did not realize she had been holding her breath until it came out in a rush. Samuel stirred in his drawer cradle, made a small sound, settled again. Clara's eyes went back to the coat. She could see it clearly now in the lamplight. On the inner lining of the collar, embroidered in red thread, E.T. She did not know what those letters stood for. Did not know who the man was or why he had helped her. Did not know what he would want in return. But she knew 3 things. She was alive. Samuel was alive. And somewhere in this house was a man who had taken off his coat in a snowstorm for strangers. That was either a miracle or a mistake. Clara was not sure which frightened her more. Elsewhere in the house, Elias Thornton sat at his desk in a study twice the size of Clara's room. The house around him was enormous. 12 rooms, most unused. Floors of imported oak. Furniture from Chicago and St. Louis. Paintings on the walls. Landscapes. Cattle drives. One portrait. A library with books he had never read. A dining room table that seated 16. He lived alone. Martha had quarters in the back. 2 ranch hands stayed in the bunkhouse year-round. But the house itself, this monument to 30 years of work, echoed. Elias stared at the unsigned deed on his desk. 480 acres. Prime grazing land. Water rights included. He had bought it at county auction 3 weeks ago. The previous owner had died. Crushed under a wagon wheel, they said. Left a widow. The bank foreclosed within a month. He had not known why he bought it. Now he did. The name on the deed, James Whitmore. Deceased. Leaving wife Clara Whitmore. He had bought her land before he knew her name, before he found her dying in the snow, before he took off his coat and carried her into his house. 3 weeks ago, he had bid on a dead man's homestead for reasons he could not explain. Tonight, the dead man's widow slept in his guest room. Elias did not believe in fate, did not believe in signs from God, did not believe in much of anything since Eleanor died. But this felt like something he was supposed to do. His coat hung on the back of his chair. He had retrieved it that first night after Martha stopped giving him tasks. It still smelled faintly like fever sweat and goat's milk and something else, something that made his chest tight. He picked it up, held it, put it on. It felt different, heavier, like it carried more than just wool now. A knock at his study door. Letter came, Martha said, not waiting for permission. She dropped an envelope on his desk. Expensive paper, town postmark, Judge Blackwood's seal. Elias opened it. Read, heard you are harboring that Whitmore woman. Might want to reconsider. Town is talking. Board of Elders asking questions. Your business relationships depend on your reputation. C.B. Elias folded the letter once, walked to the fireplace, dropped it in. The paper curled, blackened, became ash. Good, Martha said from the doorway. She left. Elias sat back down. Through the wall thin here between study and recovery room, he heard something. Humming, soft, tuneless at first, then shaping into something familiar. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Elias's hands went still on the desk. Eleanor had sung that. In the kitchen while she cooked. In the bedroom while she brushed her hair. The last time he had heard it was 25 years ago. Through a door he had been too late to open. The humming continued. The woman Clara Martha had called her was singing to her baby. Elias stood abruptly, walked to the window, looked out at his land disappearing into darkness. Behind him through the wall the hymn continued. He did not move until it stopped. Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory, April 1867. Elias was 27 years old, sitting in a hotel room that smelled like cigar smoke and old carpets. Papers spread across the bed. A land deal, 1,200 acres for $8,000. It would make him, not rich, not yet, but stable, a man who mattered. The door opened. No knock. The hotel clerk, 17 and pimpled. Telegram for you, Mr. Thornton. Elias took it, unfolded it, read, Eleanor in labor. Stop, come home, stop. The clerk was watching him. Bad news, sir. Elias looked at the papers on the bed. The contract needed his signature by tomorrow morning. If he left now, rode hard, he could make it back to their cabin in 2 days, maybe less. But the seller was leaving on the noon stage. No signature, no deal, no future. No, Elias heard himself say. Nothing that cannot wait. He signed the contract at 8 the next morning. Rode out at noon, took him 40 hours straight. The horse nearly died under him. He arrived at the cabin at dawn on the third day. The midwife met him at the door. Her face told him everything. Both he asked, she nodded. When day before yesterday, around sunset, he had been signing papers, shaking hands, celebrating with cheap hotel whiskey, while his wife died calling his name. The midwife stepped aside. He went in. Eleanor was laid out on the bed, hands folded, dressed in her Sunday clothes. Someone had combed her hair, closed her eyes. She looked like she was sleeping, except for the color, gray, white, like rendered tallow. The baby was wrapped in a blanket beside her. They had cleaned him too. Perfect, tiny, dead. Elias stood there for an hour, did not cry, did not speak, just stood. The midwife whispered from the doorway. She asked for you, kept asking, even at the end. He had built her a cabin, but had not been there when it mattered. He had given her a ring, but could not give her his time. He had promised her a future, but chose his own instead. He buried them the next day, side by side on the hill behind the cabin. 2 graves, 1 marker. He sold the land the following week, took the money, went north, built an empire, never married again, never went back. Montana Territory, present, December 1891. Elias blinked. The memory released him. He was standing at his study window. Outside, snow fell through lamplight. Silent, endless. Behind him through the wall, silence now. Clara had stopped singing. He walked to his desk, opened the bottom drawer. Under the deed, under the ledgers wrapped in oilcloth. A daguerreotype, the size of his palm. Eleanor. She looked young because she had been young. 24 when the photograph was taken. 6 months before she died. Dark hair parted in the middle, pulled back severe. White collar buttoned to her throat. She was not smiling. No one smiled in daguerreotypes. The exposure took too long, but her eyes were bright, hopeful. She had been carrying their son when this was taken. 24 years old. Clara's age. Elias set the photograph on the desk, leaned back, picked up the whiskey he had poured an hour ago. This time he drank. The liquor burned. Good. He needed to feel something besides the ache in his chest. A knock at the study door. It opened without waiting. Martha stood there in her nightdress and shawl, gray hair and a braid down her back. She looked at him, the whiskey, the photograph, his face. How long are you planning to sit here feeling sorry for yourself? Elias did not answer. Martha came in, picked up the daguerreotype, looked at it, set it down. You going to tell her, or are you going to let her think you are just a decent man? Tell her what? That you see your wife every time you look at her. Martha's voice was flat. That you are not saving that baby. You are trying to save the one you lost. Elias's jaw tightened. Does it matter? Why, he said slowly. If she lives, it will. Martha leaned against the desk. When she finds out you are using her grief to wash away your own, it will matter. I am not. You are. She pointed at the photograph. Eleanor died 25 years ago. You have been dying right along with her, one day at a time. Now here comes another young widow with a baby. And you think if you save her, maybe God will forgive you for not being there. The words hit like fists. Elias stood, walked to the window. His reflection stared back. Older, harder, hollow. She would have lived, he said to the glass, if I had been there, if I had chosen. You do not know that. The midwife said she hemorrhaged, said it took hours. Hours, Martha. If I had been there, I could have ridden for a doctor. I could have. You could have watched. Martha's voice softened, same as you are doing now. Watching and hoping it changes something. Elias pressed his forehead against the cold window. I am not a good man, Martha, I know. Everything I built on other people's loss. Bought land from homesteaders who could not make payments. Foreclosed on men with families. Made money while people starved. I know that too. Then why are you here? Martha stood, walked to the door, paused. Because bad men do not sit in the dark drinking whiskey over things they did 25 years ago. They sleep fine. She looked back at him. You are not a good man, Elias, but you are not lost yet either. She left. Elias stayed at the window. His pocket watch ticked on the desk. Loud, relentless. Time could not be undone. Choices could not be unmade. But maybe mercy could mean something even if it was born from guilt. Or maybe he was just a selfish man trying to buy redemption with someone else's salvation. He did not know. Through the wall thin here between study and recovery room, he heard something. Clara's voice. Soft, whispering. Your father died because of me. Elias went still. I asked him to check the wheel. If I had not asked, if I had just let it go, he would still be. Her voice broke. Silence. Then the sound of her crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just the small, exhausted weeping of someone who had been holding it in too long. Elias closed his eyes. Two people, two dead spouses, two souls bleeding guilt in the dark. He picked up the daguerreotype, looked at Eleanor one more time. Then he wrapped it back in oilcloth, put it in the drawer, closed it. He could not undo the past, but maybe he could stop it from swallowing them both. 1 week made a difference. Clara could walk now, slowly gripping the wall or a chair back, but walking. Her feet were healing. The salve had worked. Martha changed the bandages, every morning tugging at the scars that would remain, but satisfied the skin had closed. Samuel was thriving. In 7 days he had gained weight, his cheeks filling out, his eyes brighter. He had started making sounds again, little syllables, half words. And this morning, when Martha made faces at him while spooning mashed turnip into his mouth, he smiled, actually smiled, a real one, gap-toothed and wide. Martha set down the spoon, covered her mouth with both hands. When Clara looked closer, the old woman was crying. First time, Martha asked, voice thick. Clara nodded. She had been crying too. It was the small things. Samuel reaching for the spoon, Samuel watching lamplight on the ceiling and trying to grab it. Samuel sleeping through the night without waking once in terror. Clara tried to help where she could. Folding linens, snapping beans, simple tasks that let her feel useful instead of charity. Martha protested every time. You are still healing. I am strong enough to sit and snap beans. Stubborn is what you are. But she let her. They worked in the kitchen while Samuel napped in his drawer cradle, now permanently installed in a corner where the stove heat reached. Martha talked while they worked. About the ranch, the cattle, the brutal winter of '86 when half the territory's herds froze. She did not ask questions about Clara's past, did not press. But eventually Clara told her anyway. I was walking to my sister, she said, breaking a bean in half, snap, into the bowl. Sarah, she married a farmer in Sweetgrass County, about 40 miles east, I thought. Her hands paused. I thought she would take us in. Martha's knife kept moving through the potato she was peeling. Steady, waiting. My husband died 6 weeks back, Clara continued. The beans snapped in rhythm. Snap, snap, snap. James Whitmore. The horse spooked while he was checking the wagon wheel. Whole thing came down on him. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. She had said it enough times now that the words had worn smooth. He was 26, I am sorry. The bank foreclosed immediately. I had no claim to the land without him. They said I could work off the debt. $340. But that would take years. I did not have years. She looked at the beans in her lap. I did not even have weeks. So you walked, took everything I could carry, left the rest. Snap. 2 days out, I realized I did not have enough food. Tried to find work in Cutter's Pass, but no one hires winter help, especially not a woman with a baby. She paused. Everyone kept saying, where is your husband? Like I had misplaced him. Martha set down her knife. The last 10 miles, I just kept walking. Did not know if Sarah would even be home. Did not know if she would want us, but it was the only place I could think of. Clara's hands had stopped moving. I remember the gate. I remember thinking it looked like Heaven's Gate. All that iron, all that. She did not finish. Martha reached across the table, squeezed her hand once, let go. You are here now, that is what matters. But Clara heard what she did not say. For how long the summons came that afternoon? Not official. Judge Blackwood did not need official in a town where he held half the property notes. A church deacon delivered it. Handwritten notice on expensive paper. The Board of Elders requests Mrs. Clara Whitmore's presence at a public inquiry regarding matters of debt and moral concern. Tomorrow, 2 in the afternoon. Presbyterian Church. Attendance strongly advised. Translation: come or we will make it worse. Clara was in the recovery room nursing Samuel when she heard hoofbeats outside. Then voices. One high and reedy, one low and cold. The low one was Elias. She could not make out the words, but the tone was wrong. Sharp. The front door open. Closed. Heavy boots in the hall. Martha appeared at the recovery room door. Stay here, she said quietly, and keep the baby quiet. Clara pulled Samuel closer. Through the walls, through the floorboards, she heard them in the parlor. Elias and whoever had arrived. You cannot just ignore Protocol Thornton. I am not aware I am ignoring anything. You are housing a debtor, Mrs. Clara Whitmore. Her husband owed First Bank of Billings $340. She has no legal standing without a male relation. By law, she is a guest in my home. That is not how the town sees it. A pause. Papers rustling, unmarried woman, bachelor rancher. You understand how this looks. Clara's stomach dropped. She moved to the door, pressed her ear to the gap. Elias's voice. Colder now. What people assume is their concern, not mine. The bank wants their money. If you are claiming responsibility for her debts, that is a different matter. We can arrange. How much time does she have? Time before eviction, repossession, whatever you are here to threaten. A long pause. None. The order was signed in Billings last week. She is to report to the county seat for debt proceedings by month's end. If she does not appear, a warrant issues. Clara's hand went to her mouth. And if she can not pay women's ward in Helena until the debt is satisfied, with the child children go to. The voice hesitated. Appropriate institutions. Silence, long enough that Clara heard the clock in the hall tick 12 times. Then Elias, get out. Now see here, I said, get out. Footsteps. The front door opening. A voice from the porch, louder now, meant to carry. Your business relationships depend on your reputation, Thornton. The railroad board is watching. You had best remember that. The door closed. Clara stepped back from her door. Her hands were shaking. Samuel fussed in her arms, sensing her distress. They were going to take him, put her in a debtor's prison, and take her son. And she had brought this to Elias Thornton's door. This man who had saved them, who had asked nothing, who had given them warmth and food and mercy, now he would be dragged into scandal because of her. She had to leave. Tonight. Before she ruined him. But even as she thought it, she knew she could not, because running would destroy him. They would say he helped her flee, that he harbored a criminal. The railroad board would drop him. Judge Blackwood would freeze his accounts. The town would shun him. She could not do that to the man who had saved her life. So she would go to their inquisition. She would face them. She would tell the truth. And she would accept whatever came after. The next morning, Elias came to her room. Martha had let him in. Clara was sitting on the bed, Samuel on her lap. She had dressed in the same calico dress she had collapsed in. Washed now, pressed, mended at the elbows. Elias stood in the doorway, a folded document in his hand. Your sister is dead. No preamble, no preparation. Clara looked at him. Her face went white. November 18th. Typhoid. I sent a man to check 3 days ago. Her house is shuttered. Snow on the porch has not been walked through in weeks. Clara did not speak, did not cry, just sat there holding Samuel, looking at him with empty eyes. I am sorry, Elias said. I know you were walking to her, that she was the only place you had. Silence. I have nowhere to go, Clara said finally, her voice flat, stating fact. So they will take Samuel. The asylum, like the judge said. No. Clara looked up. Elias unfolded the document, placed it on the small table beside the bed. This is the deed to your husband's homestead. 480 acres. Water rights, timber rights, free and clear. Clara stared at the paper, did not understand. I bought it at auction 3 weeks ago. Before I knew you, before I knew your name. I saw it listed. Whitmore James M., deceased, and I bid. He paused. I did not know why. He looked at her, at Samuel, at the coat still hanging on the hook by the door. Now I do. Clara's hands trembled. She did not touch the paper. It is Samuel's land, Elias said. Legally, when he is of age, it is his. But the deed is in your name as guardian. No one can take it. No judge, no bank, no one. I cannot accept this. You already have. It is done. No. Clara pushed the paper back toward him. I cannot take charity from you. You have already lost everything because of me, the railroad, your reputation. I have not lost anything I want to keep. That is not true. Yes, it is. Elias leaned forward. His voice was quiet, steady. I spent 25 years building an empire. 12,000 acres, railroad contracts, bank accounts, this house, he gestured at the room around them. All of it so I could prove I was worth something. So I could believe I mattered. He looked up at Clara. It was empty. Every room, every acre, all of it. Clara's throat worked. You and Samuel. You are the first real thing I have done in decades. You are not taking anything from me. You are giving me something I thought I had lost. What a reason. Clara's eyes filled. I do not want your pity. This is not pity. Elias's voice hardened slightly. Pity is feeling sorry for someone and doing nothing. This is me trying to do one thing right. Let me have that. Clara looked at the deed, at his face, at the truth sitting between them. Why, she whispered. Why me? Why us? Elias was quiet for a long time. Then, because when I saw you in the snow, I saw my wife. I saw the woman I failed to save. And I thought maybe this time, maybe this once, I can get there in time. So you are using me to wash away your guilt, yes. He did not lie, probably. I do not know anymore. He looked at her directly. But I know this, whether I am doing it for the right reasons or the wrong ones, he gets to live. You get to live. That is more than I managed 25 years ago. Clara's tears spilled over. That does not make it pure. No, Elias agreed. But mercy does not have to be pure to be real. Silence. The clock in the hall ticked. Outside wind picked up. Shutters rattled. Clara reached out slowly, touched the deed. Her fingers traced the words. Whitmore, 480 acres. Paid in full. This was her husband's land, the land he had died working, the land she had lost. Now it was Samuel's. She picked up the paper, held it against her chest. Elias stood, walked to the door, stopped. Clara, she looked at him. Your husband's death was not your fault. Her face crumpled. You do not know that. Yes, I do. Because guilt does not care about truth. It just eats. If you had done everything perfectly, you would still find a reason to blame yourself. That is what grief does. He knew. God, he knew. Clara's shoulders shook. She held Samuel tighter. Elias walked out, closed the door behind him, left her there with the deed that would save her, and the truth that would have to wait. In his study, Elias sat at his desk. He did not move for 10 minutes. The letter from Judge Blackwood had been burned. The deed to the Whitmore homestead was now in Clara's hands. His railroad partnership was suspended. Everything he had built was crumbling. And for the first time in 25 years, he felt something besides empty. Through the wall, he heard Clara, singing softly to Samuel, a lullaby he did not recognize. But the sound of it, the tenderness, made his chest ache. Two women, 25 years apart, singing the same hymn. He did not know if it was redemption or punishment. Maybe both. Maybe that was all mercy ever was. Outside, the snow had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart. Through the gaps, stars were visible for the first time in days, cold and distant and beautiful. Like hope, like something worth believing in again. Elias picked up his pen, started writing. Tomorrow there would be a public inquiry, a church full of righteous people wanting to destroy a woman who had done nothing but survive. He would be there, and this time when someone needed him, he would not be too late. The wagon was loaded before dawn. Clara stood in the kitchen doorway watching Martha pack a basket of food. Bread, cheese, dried apples. Enough for a day, though the church was only 5 miles away. Martha always prepared for the worst. Samuel sat on Clara's hip, watching everything with those dark eyes that saw too much for a child his age. He had been quiet all morning, sensing something. Children always knew when the world was about to break. Clara had not slept. She had lain in the narrow inn, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her, listening to the clock in the hall mark each hour, listening to her own heartbeat, steady and stubborn, refusing to stop even when everything in her wanted to give up. Today they would try to take her son. She had known it since the moment Judge Blackwood's man had read that summons. Public inquiry regarding matters of debt and moral concern, as if her poverty was a sin, as if her survival was a crime. $340. That was what her life was worth now. What Samuel's life was worth. The price of a homestead that had already killed her husband and nearly killed her. She could not pay it. She had nothing. No money, no family, no claim to anything except the clothes on her back and the child in her arms, and the deed Elias Thornton had given her. Clara touched her pocket. The paper was there, folded small, pressed against her thigh. 480 acres. Water rights, timber rights, free and clear. She did not understand why he had done it, did not understand why a man who had everything would risk it all for a woman who had nothing. But she understood this: he had given her something to fight for. And today she would fight. The dress was the same one she had collapsed in. Calico mended at the elbows, faded from washing. Martha had cleaned it, pressed it, but it still looked like what it was. A poor woman's last good dress. Her hair would not cooperate. She had washed it that morning, but it hung limp, too thin. She had lost weight before collapsing. Weight she had not had to lose. Samuel watched her from the bed where Martha had set him. Nearly a year old now, steadier on his feet each day, trying sounds that almost became words. He had said "ma" clearly yesterday. Lamp today, pointing at the kerosene light. He was thriving, which made what she had to do harder. Clara knelt in front of him, smoothed his hair. It was getting long, curling at his neck. "We are going into town," she said softly. "People want to talk to Mama. You have to be very quiet. Understand?" "Very good." Samuel touched her face. His hand was warm, sticky with breakfast honey. Martha had let him lick from a spoon. "Ma," he said. Clara's throat closed. She pulled him against her chest, held him. She was going to lose him. She knew it. The moment Judge Blackwood had said appropriate institutions, she had known. A debtor's prison was not for children. They would take him, put him in some church orphanage in Helena or Billings, and she would never see him again. Unless she ran. She had thought about it all night, leaving before dawn, taking what food she could carry, walking. She knew how to walk now, knew how to survive cold, but she could not, because running would destroy Elias Thornton. They would say he had helped her flee, that he had harbored a criminal. The railroad board would drop him. Judge Blackwood would freeze his accounts. The town would shun him. She could not do that to the man who had saved her life, so she would go to their inquisition. She would face them, she would tell the truth, and she would accept whatever came after. Martha appeared in the doorway. "Wagon is ready." Clara stood, picked up Samuel. He wrapped his arms around her neck. She walked out of the room that had been sanctuary for 2 weeks, down the hall, through the kitchen, out the back door into winter light. Elias waited by the wagon. He wore a black suit, white shirt, string tie. The coat, the one he had covered her with in the snow, hung open. The red lining showed at the edges. He looked at her. She looked back. "You do not have to do this," he said. "Yes, I do." He helped her into the wagon. His hand was warm through her sleeve. Steadying, they rode in silence. The Presbyterian church sat on Main Street, white clapboard with a bell tower. Clara had never been inside. She had walked past it the day she had tried to find work in Cutter's Pass, felt the eyes of women in good dresses watching from the steps. Now those same women lined the pews. The church was full, not for worship, for spectacle. Clara walked down the center aisle holding Samuel. Every head turned. She heard whispers. "That is her. Shameless. Look at the baby. Poor thing." Elias walked behind her, close, not touching, but present. They sat in the front pew. Samuel immediately squirmed, reaching for Elias. Clara held him tighter. Judge Cornelius Blackwood stood at the front beside Reverend Isaiah Stone. The judge looked like he always did. Expensive suit, gold watch chain, face like granite carved by a sculptor who had never known mercy. The Reverend looked nervous, hands clasped, Bible held like a shield. Blackwood cleared his throat. The church quieted. "We are here to address a matter of legal and moral concern affecting our community. No preamble, no mercy. Mrs. Clara Whitmore stands indebted to First Bank of Billings in the amount of $340. This debt was inherited from her late husband, James Whitmore, who failed to maintain payments on his homestead." Clara's hands were shaking. She set Samuel on her lap, held him there. Under territorial law, the debt passes to his widow. As she has no means to repay, the court has issued an order of remand. Someone in the back pew gasped. Clara felt her face burn. However, Blackwood continued, "There is a secondary matter. Mrs. Whitmore has been residing for 2 weeks at the Thornton Ranch as a guest of Mr. Elias Thornton. Unmarried man, unmarried woman. No chaperone beyond a housekeeper." His voice dripped with implication. Reverend Stone stepped forward. His voice was thin, apologetic. "The church must consider the appearance of impropriety, not to cast judgment, but to protect Mrs. Whitmore's reputation and that of our brother Thornton from gossip." "Gossip you are encouraging." Martha's voice cut through from the back pew where she had been sitting. She stood, gray hair pinned tight, jaw set like iron. "Say what you mean, Reverend, or I will." Stone flinched, fell silent. Judge Blackwood smiled. "Not kind. Perhaps Mrs. Whitmore can clarify the situation herself." "Madam, how did you come to be at the Thornton property?" Clara stood slowly. Samuel clung to her skirt. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I collapsed in the snow. Mr. Thornton found me, and he brought you into his home. He saved my life, did he?" Blackwood tilted his head. "Or did he make you beholden to him? He asked for nothing, yet you remain. 2 weeks, eating his food, sleeping under his roof." Blackwood's voice sharpened. "Some might call that payment enough." The meaning was clear. Clara's stomach dropped. Rage and shame mixed together, burning in her chest like acid. A woman's voice from the pews. I saw her walking the roads at night before she came here. Baby half frozen, looking for someone to take her in. Mrs. Talbot owned the dry goods store, had refused to give Clara credit 2 weeks ago. Another voice. Maybe she planned it. Knew a rich man lived out that way. Clara's vision blurred. Samuel started crying. He never cried, but the voices were too loud. The room too tense. Judge Blackwood stepped closer. Mrs. Whitmore, you understand the severity of your situation. You cannot pay your debts. You cannot provide for your child. The church asylum in Helena can offer you shelter and honest work until... No, Clara's voice cracked. You are not taking my son. No one is taking your son. We are offering him a home, a proper home with families who can. He has a mother who let him nearly freeze to death. Silence. Total. Crushing. Clara felt the words like a blade. Samuel wailed in her arms. She bounced him, shushing, but her hands were shaking too hard. I would die, she said, voice breaking, before I abandoned my son. Yet you brought him to death's door through negligence. My husband died. Clara's voice rose, cracked, broke open. He died and I had nothing. No money, no land, no family. I walked 40 miles because I thought my sister would help. She was crying now, could not stop. But she is dead too. Everyone I had is dead, and yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I should have asked for help sooner. But I tried everything I knew and it was not enough. And I am sorry. I am so sorry. The church was silent. Samuel buried his face against her shoulder. Clara's knees were shaking. She could not stand much longer. And then she said it, the truth she had been carrying like a stone. My husband died because I sent him out in the cold. Every eye on her, I asked him to fix the wagon wheel. That morning, November 3rd, it was snowing and he said he would do it after breakfast, but I pushed. I said we needed to go to town. We needed supplies. We could not wait. Her voice was hollow. The horse spooked. Wheel came down, crushed him. She looked at Judge Blackwood, at Reverend Stone, at all of them. I killed him as surely as if I had shot him. So if you want to call me negligent, say it. If you want to take my son because I am unfit, do it. But do not pretend it is for his protection. It is because I am poor and I am alone, and that makes me inconvenient. She collapsed, not from fever this time, from the weight of confession. Her knees gave out. She would have hit the floor, but Elias caught her. He was beside her in an instant, lifting her, Samuel still in her arms, both of them in his. Judge Blackwood stepped forward. Mr. Thornton, I must advise. Her debts are paid. Elias's voice was ice. I beg your pardon, $340. I paid them this morning. She owes nothing. Blackwood's face went still. And what claim do you have on her that justifies such charity? The question hung, loaded, obscene. Elias looked at him, at Reverend Stone, at the congregation. None, he said clearly, and I want none. He carried Clara toward the door. Martha stood to follow. Reverend Stone called out, voice desperate. Brother Thornton, the church only wants to help. Perhaps Mrs. Whitmore would be better served in the asylum. For her own protection. For her reputation. Elias stopped at the door, turned his head. Reverend, he said quietly, if this is what church looks like, I will see you in hell. He walked out. The door closed behind them. The congregation sat in stunned silence. Samuel's crying was the only sound. Outside, the wagon waited. Elias set Clara in the back, laid her down on horse blankets. She was conscious but in shock. Eyes unfocused. Samuel curled against her chest, hiccuping. Martha climbed up beside them. Drive, she told Elias. He drove. Behind them through the church windows, they could see faces pressed to glass. Watching, judging. Clara whispered, I have ruined you. Elias did not answer, just snapped the reins. The wagon rattled toward the ranch, toward the only sanctuary left. The house was silent when they returned. Elias helped Clara inside. She walked on her own, but slowly, like something inside her had cracked. Martha took Samuel, who had cried himself into exhausted sleep. They put Clara to bed without words. She did not protest, just lay down, turned her face to the wall. Martha closed the door softly. looked at Elias in the hallway. She thinks she has killed you. She has not. You know that. Town does not. Martha's voice was tired. Judge will move against you now. Railroad board will hear about this by morning. Let them hear. 30 years, Elias. He did not answer, just walked to his study, closed the door. The room was cold. He had let the fire die that morning. Now it was just ash and the smell of old smoke. He stood at his desk without lighting the lamp. Through the window, darkness. Snow. Nothing else. On the desk, a letter. Must have arrived while they were at the church. He recognized the seal. Railroad board. He opened it. Read, Mr. Thornton, it has come to our attention that you are involved in a scandal of moral nature. The board cannot associate with individuals whose reputation compromises our business interests. Your partnership is hereby suspended pending resolution. Please remit all shares and documents by month's end. Respectfully, the Directors Mountain States Railroad Company. Elias read it twice. 30 years, $8,000 of initial investment, hundreds of thousands in returns. Contracts, influence, power, gone. He folded the letter, set it on the desk, looked at it for a moment, then picked it up, walked to the fireplace, knelt, found a match, struck it. The letter caught, curled, burned to ash. He stood, dusted his hands. Martha appeared in the doorway, holding a plate of cold supper. Well, she asked. Elias looked at the ashes, at the cold room, at the house around him. I am staying, he said. That is what I should have done 25 years ago. The memory came unbidden. Cheyenne, the telegram, Eleanor in labor. Stop, come home, stop. And his choice, the contract, the land deal. The future he had thought mattered more. He had arrived 3 days later, found her laid out on the bed, gray, white, like rendered tallow. The baby beside her, perfect, tiny, dead. The midwife's words whispered from the doorway. She asked for you, kept asking, even at the end. He had not been there. He had chosen something else, something that did not matter, something that had never mattered. And by the time he came back, it was too late. 25 years he had carried that weight. 25 years he had built and bought and accumulated, trying to prove he was worth something, trying to fill the emptiness Eleanor had left behind. It had never worked. But this woman and her child, this chance to be there when someone needed him, this was different. Elias walked to the window. His reflection stared back. Older, harder, but not hollow, not anymore. Martha set down the plate. Good, she said. Now eat something. You are useless when you are hungry. She left. Elias sat, ate cold beans and bread. Outside, snow began to fall again. Soft, silent, covering the tracks from town, covering the world, making everything clean. 3 days after the church trial, Deputy Marshal Frank Garrett came to the ranch. Clara was in the kitchen with Martha learning to walk without wincing. Samuel played on the floor with wooden blocks, stacking them and knocking them down, delighted each time they fell. Hoofbeats outside. More than one horse. Martha looked out the window. Her face went hard. Into the back room. Take the baby. Clara did not ask. She scooped Samuel into her arms and moved as fast as her healing feet would allow. From the crack in the door, she watched through the window. 3 men on horseback. The one in front wore a leather coat badge on his chest, face like tanned leather, eyes cold as creek water in January. Elias stepped onto the porch to meet them. No weapon, just his 2 hands hanging at his sides. Deputy Garrett. Thornton. Garrett did not dismount. Got a warrant for Mrs. Clara Whitmore. Evading debt proceedings. Her debts are paid. That is not what the paperwork says. Garrett patted his coat pocket. Order signed by Judge Blackwood this morning. She is to report to Helena for processing. On what basis fraudulent documentation? Garrett smiled. Not pleasant. Seems your payment receipt is not valid. Clara's blood went cold. Blackwood had forged papers, invalidated Elias's payment, and now he was sending men to arrest her. She is not here, Elias said. Flat, final. Your wagon out by the barn says different. Garrett looked toward the house. We can do this easy or hard, Thornton, your choice. This is my private property, and this is a federal warrant. Garrett patted his pocket again. Tense silence. Martha appeared at the door. Something wrong, mister. Thornton, nothing, Martha. These gentlemen are leaving. Garrett laughed, not amused. We will be back, Thornton, with more men, and she will come with us. They turned their horses, rode away. Clara stood in the back room shaking. They would return, with more men, and this time they would have the law on their side. She had to run, tonight, before they came back. But if she ran, Elias came inside. His face was hard as stone. I heard Clara said, I will leave, tonight, before they. No, they will come back. You heard him. With more men, they will not find you. You cannot hide me forever. I am not hiding you. Elias looked at her. I am giving you time to leave properly. That night, Elias called Clara to his study. She came with Samuel on her hip. The baby was drowsy, ready for sleep, but fighting it with the stubbornness of all children who sense something important happening. Elias sat at his desk, papers spread before him. The lamp turned low, casting half his face in shadow. Sit, he said. Clara sat in the chair across from him. Samuel settled against her chest, thumb finding his mouth. Oregon, Elias said without preamble. You said you have a friend from Pennsylvania. She wrote you years ago. Clara nodded slowly. Rebecca, she is teaching at a school in Portland. We were friends as girls. She wrote to say I could come if I ever needed. Can you get there? I think so. If I had train fare. Elias pushed an envelope across the desk. Clara opened it. Her breath caught. Money inside. More than she had ever held in her life. That is enough for train tickets to Portland, Elias said. Plus 3 months living expenses if you need time to find work. I cannot. You can. Elias leaned forward. His voice was quiet, steady. The train west runs in 6 weeks. Spring schedule. Garrett will come back before then, but I will handle it. Handle it how? By giving them what they want. Clara looked at him. Did not understand. Blackwood wants me to choose, Elias said. You are my business. I have already chosen. You cannot. Already done. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. Tomorrow I go to town, withdraw from the railroad partnership, submit all shares and documents. Clara's throat closed. That is, $50,000, Elias said. $250,000 in projected returns over the next decade. He turned to face her. Everything I have built in 30 years. Silence. Samuel's breathing had gone slow and even, asleep against her chest. Why? Clara whispered. Because everything I built was empty, Elias said. Every room, every acre, every dollar, all of it, so I could prove I mattered. So I could believe I was worth something after I failed. He looked at her. You and Samuel, you are the first real thing I have done in decades. Clara's eyes filled. They will destroy you. Then I will have what I started with. Nothing, he paused. Except this time I will know what matters. The next morning, Elias rode to town alone. Judge Cornelius Blackwood's office sat above the First Bank of Billings Territorial Branch. Expensive furniture, law books he had never read, a window overlooking Main Street so he could watch his town and count his money at the same time. Elias walked in without knocking. The judge looked up from his desk. His face went carefully neutral. Thornton, I expected you would come by. I am withdrawing from the railroad partnership. Elias set a folder on the desk. Papers are drawn up, my shares. All contracts transferred back to the board. Effective immediately. Blackwood opened the folder, scanned the documents. His eyebrows rose. That is a $50,000 stake, I know. You are walking away from $250,000 in projected returns over the next decade. I know that too. Blackwood leaned back in his chair, studied him. For what the judge's voice was almost curious. You cannot marry her, Thornton. Town will not allow it. She will leave eventually. They always do. And you will have nothing, no partnership, no reputation, nothing. Then I will have nothing. Why? Elias looked at him. At this man who had spent 40 years wielding law like a club, who had foreclosed on widows and orphans and anyone else who could not pay, who had built his fortune on other people's ruin. They had been the same once. Because Elias said quietly, I spent 25 years building an empire to prove I was worth something. And it was all empty, every acre, every dollar, all of it. He turned toward the door. That woman and her child, they're worth more than anything I have built. So if keeping them alive means losing everything else that is not a sacrifice, he paused at the threshold. That is just finally getting the math right. He walked out. Behind him, Blackwood sat in silence. Through the window, he watched Elias Thornton cross Main Street, watched him mount his horse, watched him ride out of town. The judge picked up the withdrawal papers, signed them, filed them away, poured himself a whiskey even though it was not yet noon. 3 days later, Garrett returned. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard the hoofbeats. Her hands went still over the bread dough. Samuel looked up from his blocks on the floor. Martha appeared in the doorway. Her face was calm. "Stay here," she said, "both of you." Clara pulled Samuel onto her lap, held him tight. Through the window, she watched Elias walk out to meet the deputy. This time, Garrett came alone. They spoke for 5 minutes. Clara could not hear the words, but she watched their bodies, watched Garrett's shoulders drop, watched him shake his head, watched him turn his horse and ride away without looking back. Elias stood in the yard for a long moment. Then he came inside. Clara met him in the hallway. "What happened?" Blackwood called off the warrant. Clara stared at him. "Why? Because I gave him what he wanted." Elias's voice was flat. "He wanted me to choose between you and my business. I chose you. Now there is no leverage left. No profit in chasing a widow across the territory." Clara's throat tightened. "So it is over." The warrant was never real. Just paper. Just pressure. Blackwood plays games with people's lives. When the game stops being useful, he moves on. Elias looked at her. "You are safe, Clara. Legally. Finally." She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the weight of what he had sacrificed. "You gave up everything. I gave up nothing that mattered." He walked past her toward his study. Clara stood alone in the hallway. Samuel squirmed in her arms, reaching for the kitchen where Martha was humming. She let him down, watched him toddle away. Elias had bought her freedom with 30 years of work, had faced down a corrupt judge and a federal marshal, had burned his empire to the ground so she could walk free. She did not know how to repay that. She was beginning to understand she was not supposed to. 6 weeks passed, the kind of weeks that felt like breathing after you had been holding your breath too long. Slow, quiet, necessary. Clara grew stronger. Her feet healed completely. The skin new and pink tender, but whole. She could walk without wincing now. Could stand at the stove beside Martha and stir soup without needing to sit down every 10 minutes. Samuel thrived. In 6 weeks, he gained 2 pounds. His cheeks filled out. His legs grew steady. He walked everywhere now, toddling from room to room, with his arms out for balance, delighted by his own momentum. He learned 6 new words. Lamp, horse, more, no, snow, and to Martha's endless amusement biscuit. And he laughed, not the small huffing sounds he had made before. Real laughter, head thrown back, belly-shaking joy. It happened the first time when Martha pretended to sneeze and her teeth nearly fell out. Samuel had stared for a moment in shock, then laughed so hard he tipped over backward. Clara had cried watching him. Happy tears this time. The house changed, not physically. Same rooms, same furniture, but the air was different, warmer. There was noise now, Samuel babbling, Martha humming while she cooked, Clara's footsteps in the hall. Elias found himself staying in the house more, not hiding in his study, actually present. One afternoon, he found Samuel in the parlor trying to stack wooden blocks. The baby would get 3 high, then they would tumble. He would grunt in frustration. Try again. Elias sat down on the floor beside him. Samuel looked at him, held out a block. "You want help?" Elias asked. "Up." Samuel pointed at the blocks. Elias took the block, set it carefully on top of the others, showed Samuel how to place it in the center, not the edge. Samuel tried, wobbled, held his breath. The block stayed. He looked at Elias with such pure triumph that Elias had to look away for a moment. "Good," he said quietly. "Now one more." They built a tower 6 blocks high. When it finally fell, Samuel clapped. Clara watched from the doorway. She had been folding laundry in the next room. Heard Elias's voice, patient, gentle teaching. Heard Samuel's delighted sounds. She stood there for 5 minutes, watching. A wealthy rancher who had spent 30 years alone, sitting cross-legged on an expensive carpet, building block towers with someone else's child. Mercy flowed both ways. She realized it then. She had thought Elias was saving her, and he was. But she was saving him too, just by letting him be part of something that mattered. 1 week before Clara was scheduled to leave, something changed. It was evening. Martha was cooking supper. Clara was feeding Samuel his mashed turnips. Elias walked through the kitchen to get coffee. Samuel looked up from his bowl, face smeared with turnip, smiled wide. Everyone froze. Clara stared at her son. Martha stopped stirring. Elias stood with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Samuel said again, reaching for Elias. Clara's throat closed. Samuel, no, that is not. But Elias had already set down his cup, already knelt beside the high chair. His face, that hard-weathered, expressionless face, had softened into something Clara had never seen. Hello, little one, he said quietly. Samuel grabbed his finger, held tight, smiled. Martha turned away, wiping her eyes on her apron. Clara could not speak, just sat there watching her son call this man father. And watching this man who had lost his wife and child 25 years ago, who had built an empty empire to fill the void, who had finally found something worth keeping. Accept it. That night, Clara found Elias in his study. He sat at his desk holding the wooden bird she had carved for him. She had given it to him 3 days ago. A sparrow wing spread made from scrap pine. Rough, imperfect, but recognizable. To remember, she had said, what it looks like when something takes flight. Now he held it in the lamplight, turning it over in his hands. He heard her, she called him Da. Elias did not look up. I know, he is not. You are not. I know that too. Silence. Clara stepped into the room, sat in the chair across from his desk. What are you going to do? Elias set the bird down, finally met her eyes. Let you go, Clara blinked. If you stay, Elias said, you will always wonder. If it is because you are broken and I am trying to fix my past. You will wonder if you are here because you choose to be or because you have no other choice. He understood. You need to stand on your own first, he continued. You need to know you can. And Samuel needs to see his mother strong, not saved. Clara's eyes filled. Even if it costs you everything. Everything I have is already gone. It just took me this long to notice. He picked up the bird again, looked at it. The deed stays with you, Samuel's inheritance. When he is old enough, he can decide what to do with it. Farm it, sell it, whatever he wants, but it is his. Clara nodded slowly, and the coat Elias almost smiled. Keep it for Samuel when he grows into it. Clara stood, walked to the door, paused. Thank you, she said, for everything. For. Elias shook his head. Just be happy. That is enough. Clara left. Elias sat alone with the wooden bird. Through the wall, he heard Clara singing Samuel to sleep. A hymn, soft and familiar. He did not flinch this time, just listened, and felt for the first time in 25 years something like peace. The day before Clara was scheduled to leave, she tried to return the coat. She had washed it, mended a small tear at the shoulder, brushed it clean until the charcoal wool shone soft in the lamplight. She brought it to the study where Elias was writing letters, his pen scratching steady across the paper. I cannot take this with me, she said. Elias did not look up. Keep it. It is too fine. It is worth more than it is for Samuel. When he grows into it. His pen kept moving. He will need a good coat in Oregon. Clara stood there holding it, the wool heavy in her arms, the silver buttons catching light, the red silk lining bright as blood, bright as hope, bright as the color Eleanor had said a man needed even if no one else saw it. You have given too much already, she said quietly. I have given what I could spare. That is not true. Elias set down his pen, looked at her. His eyes were tired, lines deeper than she remembered, silver in his hair catching the lamplight. He looked older than 52. He looked like a man who had finally stopped running from something and found himself exhausted by the standing still. Clara, he said, in 30 years that coat kept me warm, kept me dry, proved I was successful. He stood, walked to her. The one day I took it off and used it for something that mattered, it saved 2 lives. That is the only time it was worth what I paid for it. He gently pushed the coat back toward her. Keep it. Pass it down. Let Samuel wear it when he is grown and tell him. He stopped. Started again. Tell him there was a man once who had nothing worth keeping except the chance to do something right. Clara's vision blurred. Tears she had been holding back for days finally spilling over. She nodded. could not speak. Elias went back to his desk, picked up his pen, resumed writing as if nothing had happened. Clara left the study carrying the coat. In her room, she folded it carefully, packed it in the small trunk Martha had given her on top of the deed, on top of everything else she owned in the world. That night, she stood at her window and looked out at the ranch. Snow was melting, patches of brown earth showing through. The first signs of spring, early crocuses pushing up in the ditches, purple and white and yellow. In 6 weeks, she had gone from dying in the snow to having a future in Oregon, because a man had taken off his coat in a blizzard. Because mercy, even complicated, imperfect guilt, stained mercy was still mercy. And sometimes that was enough. In his study, Elias sat at his desk long after Clara had gone. The wooden bird she had carved sat beside the lamp. Wings spread, frozen mid-flight. He picked it up, held it. Through the wall he heard Samuel fussing, heard Clara singing softly, a hymn she had sung every night since she arrived. He did not flinch this time, just listened, and felt for the first time in 25 years something like peace. Morning came cold and bright. Reverend Isaiah Stone arrived at the ranch at 9 o'clock. Martha answered the door, gave him a look that could strip paint off a barn. "What do you want? I would like to speak with Mr. Thornton and Mrs. Whitmore, if she is willing. They are not interested in sermons. It is not a sermon." Stone twisted his hat in his hands. His face was drawn, dark circles under his eyes like he had not slept well in weeks. "It is an apology." Martha considered this. Left him standing on the porch while she went inside. Elias was in his study. Clara was in the kitchen with Samuel. "Reverend is here," Martha said. "Says he wants to apologize." Elias looked up from the ledger he had been reviewing. "Tell him no. Figured you would say that," Martha crossed her arms, "but might do him good to say it anyway. Man has been looking like he swallowed a horseshoe since that meeting." Clara appeared in the doorway, Samuel on her hip. "Let him speak," she said quietly. Elias looked at her. "He does not deserve." "Maybe not, but I need to hear it." They met the Reverend in the parlor. Stone stood twisting his hat in his hands, looking older than his 44 years, his shoulders hunched, his eyes downcast. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Thornton." He cleared his throat. "I came to apologize for what happened at the church, for siding with judgment instead of mercy." Clara said nothing, just watched him with those dark eyes that had seen too much. "I was afraid," Stone continued, his voice strained, "afraid of the board, afraid of losing my position. I let fear guide me instead of faith." He looked at Clara directly. "And I am sorry. You deserve sanctuary. You deserved protection. And I failed you." Clara shifted Samuel to her other hip. The baby grabbed her hair, pulled. "Yes," she said simply. "You did." Stone flinched, but nodded. "I understand if you cannot forgive me. I just wanted you to know the church is still open to you if you ever want to come back." "I do not," Clara said. Silence. "But thank you," she added, "for saying it." Stone looked at Elias. "And you, I do not attend church, I know. But your charity to Mrs. Whitmore has made some people think about what mercy actually looks like, about how the law and the heart do not always agree." Elias studied him. "Are you here because you feel guilty or because you learned something?" "Both." "Honest answer." Elias nodded. "Then we are done here." Stone put on his hat, walked to the door, paused. "For what it is worth," he said without turning around, "you are a better Christian than most of us who claim the name. I am not a Christian." "Maybe not, but you are Christ-like. That is rarer." He left. Martha closed the door behind him, looked at Elias and Clara. "Well," she said, "that was something." Samuel squirmed. Clara set him down. He toddled immediately to Elias, grabbed his pant leg. Up Elias lifted him. The baby settled against his shoulder like he had been doing it his whole life. Clara watched them. Something in her chest ached. The day before departure, Clara found Elias in the barn. He was checking the horses for the journey to the train station. His hands moved with practiced ease, checking hooves, adjusting harnesses. The movements of a man who had done this 1,000 times. The wooden bird she had carved sat on a shelf near his workbench. She had noticed he carried it with him sometimes, kept it close. She watched him work in silence. She wondered what he would do when she was gone. Go back to his empty house, his empty study, his empty life. Or maybe not. Maybe something had changed. Maybe saving her had saved him too. She hoped so. She hoped she had given him something worth keeping. April 3rd came cold and bright. The wagon was loaded before dawn. One trunk, two carpet bags, a basket of food Martha had packed. Enough for 3 days. Wrapped in cloth that smelled like cinnamon and care. Samuel sat in Clara's lap, wearing new clothes Martha had sewn. Wool pants, cotton shirt, a small jacket. His hair was combed. His face was clean. He looked like a child who had been loved. He was. The train station sat 5 miles from town. Just a platform and a shack, really. The eastbound came through twice a week. Today, it would carry them to the main line in Billings, then west to Portland. 6 weeks ago, Clara had been walking through snow toward a grave. Now she was leaving toward a life. Elias drove the wagon. Martha sat him back with Clara and Samuel. Nobody spoke much. What was there to say that had not already been said in 100 small ways over the past 6 weeks? Thank you felt too small. Goodbye felt too final. So they sat in silence and watched the land pass. Snow mostly gone now, grass showing through, early crocuses pushing up in the ditches, purple and white and yellow. Spring coming, whether anyone was ready or not. The platform was empty when they arrived. Elias helped Clara down. Martha lifted Samuel, who immediately squirmed to be set down. He toddled to the edge of the platform, looked at the tracks stretching east and west. Endless metal lines disappearing into distance. Train, Clara said, pointing. Train, Samuel repeated, delighted. The westbound was due in 20 minutes. Martha pulled Clara aside, hugged her hard, the kind of hug that said everything words could not. You right, Martha said, voice thick. You hear me every month. I want to know how he is doing, how you are doing, I will. If that Oregon fool does not treat you right, you come back. Door is always open. Clara nodded against her shoulder, could not speak. Martha pulled back, wiped her eyes roughly. Go on, say your goodbye to him. Clara turned. Elias stood 20 feet away, hands in his pockets, watching Samuel, who was crouched at the platform edge, examining a beetle. Clara walked to him. For a moment, they just stood there. Two people who had saved each other without meaning to. I do not know how to, Clara started. Do not. Elias's voice was quiet. Just be happy. That is enough. She looked at him, really looked. At this man who had found her dying in the snow, who had taken off his coat in a blizzard, who had carried her into his house and asked nothing in return, who had paid her debts, given her land, sacrificed his business, his reputation, everything he had built in 30 years, for a stranger, for a woman and child he did not know, because 25 years ago he had made a different choice and he had been trying to unmake it ever since. Are you, she asked, happy? He looked at her, really looked, at this woman who had collapsed outside his gate 6 weeks ago, half frozen, holding a baby she could not feed, who had stood in a church and confessed her deepest shame, who had chosen to leave rather than stay as charity. I am something, he said. That is more than I have been in a long time. Clara's eyes filled. Thank you, she whispered. For everything, for Clara. He shook his head. You do not owe me thanks. You gave me something I thought I had lost. What? A reason to be here. In the distance, a train whistle, long and low. Samuel looked up, pointed. Train had appeared around the bend. Black engine, white steam, slowing as it approached the platform. Clara bent down, picked up Samuel. He was getting heavy, solid, real. The train stopped. Conductor stepped down, calling out the stops. Portland, 15-minute stop. Martha loaded the trunk. Clara climbed aboard with Samuel in the carpet bags. Found seats by a window. Sat Samuel on her lap. He pressed his face to the glass. Waved. Outside, Elias and Martha stood on the platform. Samuel waved harder. Da, he called. Clara's throat closed. Elias raised one hand. Slow, deliberate. Waved back. Martha was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. The conductor called 5 minutes. Clara held Samuel tighter. He squirmed. Say bye-bye, she whispered. Bye, Samuel said, still waving, not understanding that this was goodbye forever, or goodbye for years. or goodbye for however long it took for Clara to become someone who could return on her own terms. Children did not understand endings. Maybe that was mercy too. The train lurched, began to move. Clara watched through the window as Elias and Martha grew smaller, watched Elias's hand still raised, watched until the platform disappeared around the bend and there was nothing but Montana landscape rolling past. Samuel settled against her chest, tired from excitement. Clara felt the weight of him, the warmth, the life. She reached into her coat pocket, found the wooden bird Elias had tucked there this morning when she was not looking, wings spread, pointing forward. On the back carved in careful letters, for when he asks where he came from. Clara held it, looked out at the passing land. Behind them a man who had learned mercy could be messy and still matter. Ahead a future she would build with her own hands. And here in her arms a child who would never remember the snow, or the collapse, or the man who had said not today to death. But she would remember for both of them. The train carried them west into morning light. On the platform, Elias and Martha stood until the train was completely out of sight. Martha wiped her face, blew her nose. Well, she said, that is that. Elias said nothing, just stood there, hands still raised, though there was nothing left to wave to. You did good, Martha said. He lowered his hand. I let them go. That is what love does. Elias looked at her. It was not love. Call it what you want. Martha walked to the wagon. Does not change what it was. Elias stood alone on the empty platform. Morning sun warm on his shoulders. The coat, his coat, the one he had given Clara, the one she had tried to return, was gone now. Traveling west with the child who had called him Day, he had given it away willingly this time. No regret, no taking back, just letting go. He touched his pocket, found the note Clara had left on his desk this morning, unfolded it, read, "We will remember. Thank you for showing us what mercy looks like." See, Elias folded it again, kept it, turned, walked to the wagon. Home, Martha asked. He looked at the empty platform, the tracks stretching in both directions, the morning light making everything clean and new. Yes, he said. Home. They rode back in silence, but this time the silence did not feel empty. 2 years passed. Portland, Oregon. June 1894. Clara stood on the porch of the small house she had bought last year with money saved from teaching. Not large, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, parlor, but it was hers. She had painted the door blue, planted flowers in the front, made curtains for the windows from fabric she had chosen herself. It was the first home she had ever owned that no one could take from her. Samuel ran in the yard, chasing the neighbor's doing that had wandered over and refused to leave. 3.5 years old now, tall, strong, blonde hair curling like his father's. Sam, dinner. He looked up, smiled. That smile, still the same, gap-toothed and wide and full of joy. 5 more minutes, Mama Clara shook her head, smiling. She went inside. On the table, the letter she had received this morning. Clara dear, winter was mild this year. Snow, not as deep as last. Martha complains her knees ache, but she still cooks better than anyone in 3 counties. I sold 2,000 acres to the railroad company. They needed land for the new line. The money was enough to fix the barn and hire 2 more hands. The wooden bird still sits on my desk. I look at it every morning. Tell me how Samuel is. Does he remember anything E.T. Clara had written back immediately? Elias dear. Samuel does not remember. He was too young. But I have started telling him. About the man who took off his coat in a blizzard. About the warm house that saved us. About Martha and biscuits and wooden blocks. He calls you the Elias in the story. He asks when he can meet you. I do not know what to tell him. The homestead is still his. I keep the deed in the trunk with the coat. He will decide when he is old enough. But I hope one day he will want to see it. See where he almost died and where he was saved. And see you, see. She sealed the letter. Set it aside to post tomorrow. Outside, Samuel's laughter, the dog barking, the sounds of a life being lived. Clara walked to the trunk in her bedroom, opened it. The deed, the coat, the letters, the wooden bird she kept here instead of giving to Samuel. Not yet, when he was older, when he could understand. She picked up the coat, held it. Charcoal wool, silver buttons, red silk lining. It still smelled faintly of tobacco and horses and something else. Safety. She folded it carefully, put it back, closed the trunk, went to call her son for dinner. Montana Territory. Same day. Elias sat on the porch at sunset, reading Clara's letter. Martha brought out 2 cups of coffee, sat in the chair beside him. News, she asked. He is well. She bought a house. Good. Martha sipped her coffee. Silence. Crickets starting up. Cattle moving in the distant fields. You miss them. Not a question. Elias did not answer right away. Looked out at his land. 10,000 acres now after selling some to the railroad. Looked at the iron gate in the distance where he had found them 3 years ago. Every day, he said finally. So why do you not visit? Because she needs to build her own life. Not live in the shadow of the man who saved her. Martha snorted. That is a reason or an excuse? Elias smiled, thin, rare, but real, maybe both. He set down the letter, picked up his coffee. She says Samuel asks about me, calls me the Elias in the story. Martha was quiet for a moment. You could be more than a story, she said finally, if you wanted. I know. Do you want? Elias looked at the sunset, purple and gold and fading. I want her to be happy, he said. I want Samuel to grow up strong. I want them to have everything I could not give Eleanor. That is not what I asked. Martha's voice was gentle. I asked what you want. Elias was silent for a long time. The sun sank lower. The sky darkened. Stars beginning to show. I want, he said slowly, to see him again. The boy who called me Da. His voice caught. I want to know he is real. That I did not imagine him. That something good came from all those years of nothing. Then write and tell her, Martha said. Tell her to bring him. Elias shook his head. Not yet. When he is older. When he can understand. Understand what that sometimes people save each other, and sometimes saving someone means letting them go. Martha stood, collected the cups. You are a stubborn old fool, Elias Thornton. I know. But you are a good one. She went inside. Elias sat alone on the porch, watching the stars come out, thinking of a train heading west, a woman with dark blonde hair, a child with gap-toothed smile, thinking of coats and mercy and second chances, thinking of Eleanor. For the first time in years, the thought did not hurt. She would have liked Clara, would have liked Samuel, would have been glad that something good had come from all that loss. He hoped she knew, wherever she was. He hoped she knew he had finally done something right. Portland, 3 months later. Clara stood at the window watching Samuel play in the yard. The letter had come yesterday. Clara, dear, if Samuel wants to see the ranch, bring him. The door's always open. E.T. She had read it 12 times. Had not answered yet, did not know how. 3 years. 3 years of letters. 3 years of carefully maintained distance. 3 years of building a life that was hers alone. And now this. An invitation. A door opening. She did not know if she was ready to walk through it. Mama Samuel stood in the doorway, dirty from playing, hair tangled, face flushed. Can we have biscuits? Clara smiled despite herself. After dinner, Martha's biscuits. Clara's heart clenched. She had taught him about Martha, about the ranch, about the man who had saved them. He knew the story like a fairy tale. Asked for it at bedtime sometimes. Tell me about the coat, Mama. Tell me about the snow. Tell me about the man who said not today. He did not understand that the story was real, that the man was real, that somewhere in Montana, an old rancher sat alone in a big empty house waiting for a letter that might never come. Maybe, she said, maybe we can visit sometime. Samuel's face lit up. Really, we can see the Elias. Clara knelt down, took his hands. Would you like that? To meet him, Samuel nodded vigorously. I want to see the gate, the one that looks like heaven. And the blocks. Can we build towers? Clara pulled him close, held him. Yes, she whispered, we can build towers. That night, after Samuel was asleep, Clara sat at the table, pen in hand, paper before her. She wrote, Dear Elias, we will come in spring, when the snow melts, when the crocuses bloom. Samuel asks about you every day now. He wants to build block towers. He wants to see the gate. He does not know yet that you are the reason he is alive. That everything he has, everything he is, exists because a stranger took off his coat in a blizzard. But I will tell him when he is old enough, when he can understand. Until then, he knows this: there is a man in Montana who saved us. A man who gave us everything and asked for nothing. A man who taught us what mercy looks like. He calls you the Elias in the story, but you were always more than a story to us. You were the reason we got to have one. See you in spring. Clara. She sealed the letter, set it aside, went to the window, looked out at the night. Somewhere east across mountains and plains and rivers, an old man sat in an empty house, waiting, hoping, believing that mercy was not just a moment, it was a door that stayed open. Montana, the following spring. The train pulled into the station at noon. Elias stood on the platform, Martha beside him. He had not slept the night before, had paced his study until Martha threatened to lock him in the barn. They are just people, she had said, same as before. They are not the same, he had answered. Nothing is the same. And he had been right. The train doors opened. Clara stepped out first. She was different, stronger. She stood straighter. Her dress was new, well made, the dress of a woman who had earned her place in the world. Behind her, Samuel, 3.5 years old, tall for his age, blonde hair curling at his neck, eyes bright with excitement. He looked around the platform, searching, found Elias, and broke into a run. Elias, the boy crashed into his legs, arms wrapping around, face pressed against his trousers. Elias stood frozen. Then slowly, carefully, he knelt down. Samuel looked at him. Really looked. You are real, the boy said. Mama said you were real, but I was not sure. Elias's throat closed. I am real. Can we build towers? Elias almost laughed, almost cried. Settled for neither. Yes, he said, we can build towers. Samuel grinned, that gap-toothed smile, the same one Elias remembered from 3 years ago, the same one he had never forgotten. Clara reached them, stopped a few feet away. She was crying, not trying to hide it. Hello, she said. Hello, Elias said. And somehow that was enough. Martha bustled forward, scooped Samuel up. Come on, little man. Let us see if you remember what biscuit means, Biscuit, Samuel shouted. Martha carried him toward the wagon, talking the whole way about how tall he had gotten, how handsome, how much he looked like his mother. Clara and Elias stood alone on the platform. You came, he said. We came. Silence, not uncomfortable, just full. He is beautiful, Elias said finally. He is, Clara agreed. Because of you, Elias shook his head. Because of you, you saved us. Clara stepped closer. You gave us everything and asked for nothing. And I spent 3 years trying to figure out how to repay that. She looked at him. I finally realized I cannot. Some debts are not meant to be repaid. They are meant to be passed on. Samuel's laughter from the wagon. Martha's voice warm and scolding and full of love. So I am going to teach him. Clara continued. What you taught me. That mercy does not have to be pure to be real. That sometimes the broken things save the broken people. That love is not about what you get back. Her voice caught. It is about what you give away. Elias did not speak. Could not. 27 years ago, he had chosen a land deal over his wife. 3 years ago, he had chosen a stranger over his empire. Today, standing on this platform, he realized he had been making the same choice his whole life. He had just been choosing wrong until now. I have something for you, Clara said. She reached into her bag, pulled out something wrapped in cloth, unwrapped it. The coat, charcoal wool, silver buttons, red silk lining. I cannot, Elias started. You can, Clara held it out. Samuel does not need it yet. He is too small. But you should have it back. For now, until he is ready. Elias took it, the wool familiar in his hands. The weight of it, the smell. For 20 years, this coat proved I was successful, he said quietly. For 3 years, it proved I was kind. He looked at Clara. Now it proves something else. What? That some things are worth more than we pay for them, and some things are worth more when we give them away. He folded the coat over his arm. I will keep it for him, until he is ready. Clara nodded. They stood there another moment. 2 people who had saved each other. 2 people who had let each other go. 2 people who had found their way back. Not to love, to something rarer, to family. Come, Elias said finally. Martha will never forgive us if the biscuits get cold. Clara smiled. They walked to the wagon together. How long can you stay? Elias asked. Clara looked at him, at the ranch stretching out behind him, at the iron gate in the distance where she had almost died. I have a teaching position waiting in September, she said. But until then, she paused. Until then, I thought Samuel might like to learn about the land that belongs to him. Elias nodded slowly. And you? Clara smiled. I thought I might like to remember what it feels like to be home. It was not a promise, not a declaration, just a door left open. Just two people learning that sometimes the hardest part of mercy was letting yourself receive it. Samuel reached for Elias immediately. Up, Elias lifted him, settled him on his hip. The boy weighed nothing, everything. Tell me the story, Samuel said, about the snow, about the coat, about the man who said not today. Elias looked at Clara. She nodded. Once upon a time, Elias began, there was a man who had everything and nothing. He lived in a big house with empty rooms. He had land and money and cattle, but he had no one to share it with. What happened? Samuel asked. One day in the middle of winter, he found something in the snow. What a woman and a baby. They were cold and hungry and lost. Did they die? Numb, Elias's voice was quiet. The man took off his coat. He wrapped it around them. He carried them into his house. And he said, what did he say? Not today. Samuel was quiet for a moment. That was brave, he said finally. Elias looked at Clara, at Samuel, at the life he had helped save, the life that had saved him. No, he said. That was mercy. Samuel did not understand, not yet. But someday he would. Someday he would wear that coat, walk through that gate, stand on that porch where his mother had almost died, and he would understand that mercy was not a moment. It was a choice, made over and over, every day, for the rest of your life. The wagon rolled toward the ranch. Behind them, the train pulled away, heading west, carrying other people to other lives. Ahead, an iron gate, a big house, an old woman with sharp tongue and soft heart. And somewhere in the middle, a family, built not from blood, from something stronger, from mercy, from choice, from love that asked nothing and gave everything. Clara leaned against Elias's shoulder. Samuel babbled about towers and biscuits and the dog he had left behind in Portland. Martha drove the wagon, humming something low and familiar. Come, thou fount of every blessing. Tune my heart to sing thy grace. And Elias Thornton, who had spent 25 years running from one mistake, finally stopped, finally rested, finally came home.